Hello. Welcome once again to another episode of GM Tips for Rise of the Runelords. I will put a little quieter town music today. But today we are talking about Book 3 of Rise of the Runelords, and that is the Hook Mountain Massacre. This one's a fun book. I like this book. It's a weird book. I guess, it's kind of like the first, I don't know, big direct act where the party is beginning to go against Karzug's forces a little bit more directly. They don't quite know exactly what is going on or why it's going on, but they're actually out on the move, trying to preemptively look into something rather than react to things that have already happened. In the case of the murders that were sort of happening to them in the prior book. There's still a lot of things happening to the party in this book, but I don't know. Something about the feel of this one, the party feels a little bit more engaged with what will be sort of the direct main narrative of the story. It's also, I guess, what levels I should have been tracking the levels during all of these to give milestone advice. But if you're playing in first edition, I think the milestones that they list are pretty good and accurate for each book. When I ran the adventure in first edition, I just used their fast advancement track, which is what's listed in the anniversary edition. It looks like this book is set to run from 7th to 10th level, and very close to 11th. And so when I ran this in second edition, I actually kept all of the books the same, except for the last book, or the last two books. I was trying to accelerate things because I realized, wait a sec, I don't want to end at 17 or 18. I'd like to end at 20, and have the party actually be 20 for the final Karzug fight. And that seemed to work for the most part. Yeah, this is definitely the point where the party needs to take some agency rather than being thrust into situations. Yeah, this is where the party, really has to start being the heroes they're claimed to be. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So like the other books, I again like to sort of start with who are the antagonists, what are they doing, and why. We'll start, again, we sort of start from the top end. The top end here is really Karzug, but we'll sort of go a step lower than that. The main antagonist of this book, kind of indirectly, Sir not appearing in this book, is Mokmurian. He is a stone giant wizard. He is the boss of Lucretia and Barl, I would sort of call him the boss of both of them. He is currently sort of either a big fanboy of or soft possessed by Karzug, and is attempting to build up a huge army of giants, as well as resurrect Karzug himself. And sort of tertiary to that, he's also trying to find the location of the Rune Forge, which he knows has powerful magic, possibly the only magic that would be capable of stopping Karzug. None of that really matters directly to the players, but it is important for the motivations of Lucretia and Barl. So Lucretia is Zanisha's sister from the last book. She is also a Lamia. Exactly whether or not they're blood related is sort of unclear. They call each other sisters, but it might be more fraternal. The main thing that she is doing is trying to mastermind Karzug's resurrection plans here in Turtleback Ferry, and on Hook Mountain, which is sort of the main setting for this book. Where Zanisha was hunting down very specific people who were already greedy, Lucretia is attempting to turn people greedy and then slaughter them after they've been fattened up, so to speak. So she, prior to the start of the book, she is already set up a pleasure barge called the Paradise, where she encouraged the gambling habits of the people of Turtleback Ferry and the nearby towns, and eventually sunk the ship with a bunch of people on board, killing all of them after they had... I skipped a step, but she, as part of the membership of this club, to get on the ship, you have to get a Sahedron tattoo. So she got a bunch of people to become more greedy than they perhaps already were, or tempted greedy people onto the ship, and then slaughter them all wholesale. And the people that she missed, she plans to eventually either slaughter with the Kriegs, or I guess simultaneously she's plotting to kill them all with the by basically breaking the dam and flooding it. So she's got a group of hags working with her to cause the rains to overflow the Storval Dam, causing it to hopefully break, flood the town, basically killing everybody, and hopefully all the greedy people she's already marked. Barl, on the other hand, is a bit more straightforward. He is largely just here in the Hook Mountain region to gather up ogres for Mokmurian's Giantkin cause. They intend on uniting a bunch of giants to sort of recreate Karzug's old giant army. The exact reasons are a bit nebulous. I kind of go with like a vague sense of like, oh, Karzug's gonna return our civilization to its former glory. There were once days when giants were looked upon as amazing heroes and were viewed in awe, and now we are all scattered to the winds, sort of thing. I don't know if that's exactly the lore that they were intending. There's a lot of giants were enslaved by Karzug, so that doesn't quite hold up perfectly, but in any case, they see this as some attempt at a power play to move giant civilization up the kind of hierarchical ranks of the world. Sorry, I'm now catching up on chat. She set her side slow, though. Turtleback Ferry can have nearly that much of a population. No, not really. It's got a population of like under 500, I think. But so it was a bunch of people in the neighboring towns as well. So that's sort of their excuse for it. It seems like Karzug's plan doesn't need that many people to die. But I suppose greedy people as a subset of the human population at large is already relatively small, so maybe you just need... Yeah, Zanisha, too, was also targeting a relatively low number of people. So it seems like they don't need that many greedy souls to die in this ritualistic way to get things to be rolling. And let's see. So the next sort of lower level than that are the Kriegs. These are the ogres that have basically been in the Hook Mountain area for a long time, it seems. They had been at a very long stalemate with the Black Arrows, who are basically the Night's Watch, if you're familiar with Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones. They're like a group of... not ne'er-do-wells, but people who have sort of given up the public life to sort of live in sort of fraternity up on Hook Mountain, protecting the locals from the giants and ogres that could descend at any moment. The Kriegs have thus far been very disorganized, but the arrival of Lucretia and Barl has given them suddenly a lot more organization, and it's how they're able to... through Lucretia's plotting, it's how they're able to take over Fort Rannick. And then we have the Grulls, who are just a tiny family of ogrekin. They're actually half ogres, who seem to be working sort of with or subordinate to the Kriegs. So they're at the very lowest rung of the ladder. Okay, the allies this time. So this book has a lot of allied PCs that the party is going to meet fairly early. Because this is actually the book that has, I think, the largest scale of combat. There's a lot of chances for fairly large fights with a lot of creatures involved. So having a lot of allies is helpful. Sometimes the party, depending on how the party chooses to approach Fort Rannick, they could end up using a lot of assistance, either for decoys and simultaneous plans, or just for added combat assistance. It's great for small groups if you've got a sub 4-person group to have these kind of extra people on hand to allow you to do bigger and tougher fights without necessarily bogging things down. So make sure you make stat blocks for all these characters. This is basically the 3 black arrows, Shalelu and Kib. Make sure their stat blocks are fairly simple. Shalelu, you might have already statted out. You could stat her either as a player or as a creature. It depends on what you feel like doing as far as fidelity goes. For all of the other ones, I would go very simple. Just do like a very simple NPC stat block. Give them 1 or 2 special actions that they can just reliably do over and over again. And don't think about them too much. They're not intended. Do not let them overshadow the party. They are just here to assist. And they should be like pretty close to the level of the PCs, either a level above or a level below, wherever the PCs start the book at. So they should be like close to level 7 or 8. And the party should level up past them, and it should become clear that the party is obviously going to be better than them as time goes on. You can, if you want to keep any of these characters around, you totally can, but only Shalelu returns in later APs. The other 3-4 characters here are basically irrelevant to the greater story of Galarian, so you can kind of do whatever you want. These are also all great options for backstory connections. Their stories are fairly light. There's basically just a couple paragraphs on each one, and that's basically it. Jakardros and Shalelu have the most complicated ones, but Vale and Kaven are pretty simple. So good opportunity to tie characters in. In third action, I decided to tie Asher in with the Jakardros and Shalelu plot, because we hadn't really worked out a story yet for Asher. So it was kind of a fun thing to do. I feel like I made it a little bit too complicated and fucked up a few of the details because it was so complicated when we were streaming it, but you could do better than me. They're also a great source of drama for RP purposes. This book is actually relatively light on NPCs that the party can sort of interact with. You don't spend a lot of time in Turtleback Ferry itself, and none of the NPCs there have portraits, as I'll probably get to. So yeah, just these are kind of like your core cast for this book. So feel free to make them as fun and interesting as you want. Mileage may vary as a GM, but that's that. So specifically on Shalelu, if you're playing in 2E, I would make her either a precision or an outwit ranger. Make sure she's updated to the party's level if you'd been using her at a lower level earlier on in the adventure. She is intended to kind of be like very, very long distance support. She should be playing at kind of max range most of the time, and that should be her sort of preferred style. That helps her stay out of danger. I like just hunted shot, move, and then hide is a pretty basic strategy. For all these NPCs, it's easier if you come up with like what's their default, like what does a default 3-action turn look like for them in 2E, or in first edition, what does their default turn look like? Try to give them a limited number of feats if you're in first edition, for similar reasons of just keeping everything simple. Most of the time they're probably just going to full attack and that's it, or attack and move. She should know her limits. Shalelu is very smart. She's experienced as an adventurer. She's helpful for being able to suggest game plans to parties if they are indecisive or don't know specific lore, or are kind of spinning their wheels on something. You should always try to defer choices to the PCs when possible. She can just offer suggestions, because she is a helpful character. The party will see her ideas as being trustworthy. Whereas someone like Caven, or any of the Black Arrows, the party doesn't know as well. And then you have to get the whole like, ooh, I got to insight check her to see if she means harm. Obviously, Shillelagh doesn't mean harm at any point. She's just here to help the party. So I think her suggestions are usually taken at face value. She can also use snares. She can know some survival skills if your party is sort of missing those. I know a lot of parties tend to it's very easy for a party to just be missing survival entirely. Not the third action crew, but I've seen it happen before. Shillelagh can be a good filler for that if you don't have anyone who's into those things. She can help with overland travel, subsisting and hunting, that sort of thing. Generally very useful. So let's get to the actual part 1 of this book, which is In the Hook's Shadow. We start with the request from the mayor, then we have to sort of travel to Turtleback Ferry, where the the entirety of the book takes place. Once we're there, we have the trek from the town to they're trying to go to Fort Rannick, but on the way they encounter a strange fire pelt and get led to the Grawl farm, where they meet the last of the Black Arrows. So let's talk about the mayor's request. I mentioned this at the end of the prior episode of these GM tips. The mayor is going to request that the party helps him out with a little bit of reconnaissance. They've received a request for help from the Black Arrows, and he needs someone to go check it out. And the party is strong. The party might as well do it. I believe the party also has some information about Lucretia. Actually, I forgot to check. Does the note from Lucretia to Zanisha say... it does mention Turtleback Ferry. Okay. So Turtleback Ferry is mentioned by name, so the party might actually want to go there already. So depending on how gung-ho your party is, you might need to have this meeting sooner rather than later. It really depends on your group, but be ready to have Grabaris try to get them to go there with post-haste. I would leave a few days gap if you can, but don't go too long. You don't want the party to kind of meander off doing their own thing right before the adventure needs to kick off. This is a good point for wealth correction. And actually, I probably should have brought this up in between books in general. Usually at the end of books and APs, there's usually some kind of reward given to the party, or like a big hoard or something. Those are good points where you can audit the party's character sheets. Check what their kind of general wealth is, compare it to the wealth tables either in first edition or second edition. See if the party is kind of at par, and if you've been giving enough stuff. And if you haven't, you can use moments like these to fill the player's coffers back up and get them to catch up a little bit. It's a good chance for the mayor to kind of front load, give the party a bunch of money that they may have been missing because you didn't give money for the last few encounters. That might actually be the case, given that I don't know if there's a lot of treasure lying around at like the 7 Sawmill. Good chances to give the party lots of money. While they're still here in Magnamar, it's also a good chance to spend some of their wealth to grab some new equipment. They won't be back here until the end of the book. Like while they're in Turtleback Ferry, they just don't have a lot of ready access to towns or to shopping. You can try to correct that. I did something like that in third action where I introduced, there's like a gnomish settlement. I forget what it's called. That's kind of nearby. So I made I made it so that the party could go over to that gnomish camp to get supplies. So more of the magical supplies that wouldn't be available in Turtleback. Let's see. If the party wants to return to Sandpoint between books, that also can be fine. You could also delay if they intend to go straight back to Sandpoint. Then you could maybe wait on Grobarus's request, let them go back to Sandpoint, send the invite to them in Sandpoint, and then Shalelu can hear about it while the party is there and come back with them. In general, you need to remember to actually recruit Shalelu for this journey. She can either insert herself into the party if the party is in Sandpoint. If the party is going to Turtleback Ferry, usually via ferry, then she can already be on the boat. I think that's what I did in third action. She could have heard about the troubles with the Black Arrows and wanted to go check it out for herself. She might have gotten actually a letter, potentially from Jakardros. Or she could have just been hired by Grobarus herself. She is also an adventurer, sort of. She's known in the area. It's not unreasonable. And I would also make sure that Mayor Shreed is probably in Turtleback Ferry should be the point of contact for once the party gets there. So make Grobarus mention Mayor Shreed so the party knows to go to him, rather than just having to guess once they arrive in town. Is Shalelu written to join, or is she sensible because of the familiar relation? She's actually written to join the party. It's stated that when the party goes, she joins with you. They don't. Her reasoning is she knows that she has the familiar relation. She knows that Jakardros is there. I think she's been looking for him prior/during the adventure. So I believe the story goes that she finds out that Jakardros is there, finds out that there have been, or that the Black Arrows have maybe had some kind of issue, and she is curious and wants to go check it out herself. A combination of worry and frustration. There's a little bit of I hope they haven't killed him because I want to kill him. Not that extreme, but Shalelu has some mixed feelings on dear old stepdaddy. Okay, I'll take a sip. All right. Actually, a note on Shalelu. It's if I had thought about it last time, I actually maybe I did mention it. I'm not sure. It's a good idea since Shalelu shows up in book 1 a lot, and possibly in book 2 if your party hangs out with her a lot. It's totally reasonable for her to have mentioned her upbringing at any point. Her weird relationship with her stepfather and her mother's death and all that. It is something that does haunt her, so maybe she would bring it up in casual conversation if the party really gets to know her. That's a chance for you to just kind of foreshadow some of this stuff early if you want. Okay, so the Yondabakari to the Skull. The Yondabakari River is the most likely path, I think, that the party will take to get to Turtleback Ferry. At this level, I don't really think most parties have access to a lot of flying magic. I mean, they could, but it's I guess they might have some flying magic. But in any case, this would be the sort of casual way to get there. You can have Grobarus pay for the journey. It should be relatively cheap. At this level, nothing permanent for long distance travel. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because Windwalk. What level is Windwalk? In 2E. Windwalk is quite high. Oh yeah, Windwalk's like level 8 spell or 8th rank spell. So yeah, no Windwalk. Yeah, and no, it's not like they're gonna have teleport or anything. So either the party is making some long land trek, or they're gonna take the kind of leisurely boat cruise. I think the leisurely boat cruise is fun. This is where you're gonna want to have a full-on map of Varizia. I think there is no map of Varizia in the book. I might be incorrect on that. But I believe that's the case. I think the Rise of the Runelords Anniversary Edition does not include an overall Varizia map, but this map that I'm showing here on the screen does exist. This is actually a much bigger version of it that shows the... that shows further into like the Storval Plains and stuff. You can find it on Google. I believe it's also in... I believe it's in the Big Inner Sea book. But it'll be useful for just knowing where a bunch of things are in relation to each other. I mean, I guess this is like a big majority of the adventure is right here in this section of the map with Magnamar, Sandpoint, and Turtleback. The next bit is kind of up to the north, and like the northwest over by Riddleport, and then the very far northeast in the Storval Mountains. But it's handy for the players. It's good for as a handout, just so that the party sort of knows where everything is in relation to each other. If you're running this on a VTT, I'd add a hex overlay, and you can do daily markings with it if you want to do the travel day by day. Note the rain. As the party gets closer to Turtleback Ferry, it should be raining a lot. That's very important. Lucretia has some hags doing control weather in the region. The whole region is going to, as they get probably close to like Wardle there on the map, which is like around, oops, how do I go back? There we go. Around here or so, they should start noticing that it's raining. If there's any like high survival characters or high nature characters in the party, they might start noticing that it's been raining every single day. That's a little bit out of the normal. Let's see. You can also just handwave this whole travel if you want. The book just kind of assumes that you get there pretty quickly. I think this is a good opportunity for the party to chill a little bit, have some kind of interact a little bit with the just kind of commoners that exist in the region, so they get to know Varizia a little bit better. This would be a good chance to actually introduce some more Varizians, native Varizians, into the picture. I didn't happen to do that, but I actually underused, I think, the Varizians and the Shawanti a little bit. But it's fun to do while they're on the boat. And just don't... I think I've already said this, but just don't do random encounters. Limit them if you're going to use them to like maybe one per overall travel. But for something like this, keep any like kind of combat encounters to the minimum. There's so many encounters in these books, you do not need to add more, trust me. But yeah, this is a good time to do downtime, have character interactions. If you're familiar with Fire Emblem, I like to call these support conversations. Or if you're familiar with Tales games like Tales of Vesperia or Tales of Symphonia, I like to call them skits as well. These are good chances for characters to just kind of have paired interactions with each other in very mundane situations. It builds rapport, it builds camaraderie, it creates running gags. You can have a few like kind of situation prompts ready for the party. And yeah, I don't know, it's fun. It's fun character building, especially at this point in the adventure where I think everybody, if you're playing with new players, I think this is the point in the adventure where everybody feels pretty comfortable in who their character is and can actually start interacting with NPCs and each other in sort of kind of natural ways. At least that's sort of what I've noticed with a lot of parties. This is also a great point to start having rumors of the Paradise ship and the tragedy that happened. It's actually unclear exactly when the tragedy occurred, like when the ship was sunk. So you can kind of choose to have sunk whenever you want. It could be as far away as a year ago. It could be as close as some point along the journey, the party hears about, oh, hey, that pleasure barge, the Paradise, that's really cool. I was going to go spend some time there. And then the next town over, they find out it sank. That's totally a reasonable thing to do. You can do it out whatever way, just have a plan for it. Yes, you can use this time to find out that one of the party members is really good at fishing, like we did in third action. Lucretia finds out that her sister dies and then murders a ship full of people in her fury. Yeah, it's totally reasonable. She is kind of... it's kind of funny that she just suddenly decides, I'm done with the ship, and just sinks it. So, yeah, I mean, finding out that her sister is dead could certainly be the impetus for that. Her reasoning in story is sort of arbitrary, I suppose. I've already mentioned it before, but remember the rain. Throughout this entire book, the rain is an important aspect of the story. There is a coven that is currently using control weather on Lucretia's behalf to get ready to basically flood the town of Turtleback Ferry and all of this town's... sorry, it's not just Turtleback Ferry that's getting flooded either, it's all the towns downriver, if the dam breaks. It's just that the part of the dam breaks in the story and only part of Turtleback Ferry gets flooded. But if the party fails to stop the Storval Dam from breaking, then the entire region will get flooded. And that's what Lucretia's goal is. Yeah, you should note any survival-oriented PCs should probably pick up on the rain weirdness relatively quickly. If no one else is trained, then maybe just the repeated mentioning of each day, oh, it's a rainy day again, will be enough to start to get people to be suspicious. You don't want them to go out and do anything about it necessarily, but you do want it to be present. Also, this is a great chance to use mechanics. There are so many mechanics in role-playing games that I think are very underutilized. One of the things that can make encounters more interesting, so a lot of people have played the standard, we sit in a room, we fight. A lot of people have played the standard, we're in a forest, we fight. What a lot of people have not done is we're in a forest, it's raining, and we fight. And I feel like a lot of people have this tendency to, the rules are complicated, don't worry about it, I want to be nice to the players, it's okay, it's raining, but it's just for thematics, it's fine, don't worry about it. But like, the mechanics are thematics, like, it's really fun to be like, oh, that encounter was tough because it was raining and we couldn't see shit. Or that encounter was tough because the ground was muddy and all of the ground was difficult terrain. Definitely make it rain. Like, keep the rain, use the effects that are listed in the books. Both first edition and second edition have plenty of examples of mechanics. I've listed a couple of them here from second edition, but feel free to use your own. Have one day be a thunderstorm, that's totally fun. It's cool. It adds a lot of mechanics to it, or it adds a lot of like thematics to the situation that really, like, I think sticks in the players' heads a little bit more than just we fought in a forest or we fought in a cave. Use it. It also makes some kind of niche spells a little bit more fun and useful. Also add effects to, if you're playing on VTTs, this is a great chance to use like rain effects or GIFs. If you've got modules for those. If you're playing with music, you can add rain and thunder sound effects on top of them. I like Sirenscape for this, but there's also, you can just grab YouTube videos and play them on top of your music. That's fine too. I have noticed that the rain will sometimes make some people sleepy. So either use very quiet, it depends on your group, just note if it's making people sleepy. You might need to adjust that, or maybe don't use it, but it is cool. It's a lot of fun. Joey says, as a viewer, I really felt the rain added to the sense of dread in the whole book. I felt like the party was in over their heads. I also had no idea about the mechanics of when something could learn control weather. Yes, it is It is very. I like to. I like to use the rain like starting off as a drizzle and getting worse and worse and worse each day, and it like feels. Yeah, I like the dread. It feels like something's happening. That's scary. Make sure to use as many modules as possible. No. You only need one module for the rain. I think there's an FX module in Foundry. When we played this book, we were still in roll 20 for third action. I believe I just grabbed there's some like GIF image sets that you can get that are just like a rain overlay, and I just put those on top of the adventure, or on top of the encounters. Turtleback Ferry is pretty boring, actually. There's not a lot here. I guess it's like with any town, it's as much as you want to make of it. If you've been playing the adventure up to this point, you've already had to run a very detailed Sandpoint and a probably less detailed Magnemar, even though it's technically a bigger city. You're probably a little bit, if you're like me, you're probably a bit burned out on like making all the characters hyper detailed at this point. You don't have to. There's really just not a lot going on here. The NPCs don't even have portraits. There's like a couple of characters that have names at each location. There's just really nothing here. The two characters that I think are of note that you can probably flesh out a little bit more than are presented is Malin Shreed, the mayor/priest. I would have him be the one specifically who requested Grobar's help, so that the party has a point of contact, and that he can then tell the party how to get to Fort Rannick as soon as they arrive, and fill them in on the situation in the local area. The other character is Tilia Hankinson. She's the teacher for a bunch of school children. When the flood event happens, she is like trying to frantically get her children to safety. I didn't do it either of my last two times. I was thinking about it this time. It'd be cool if the players had already met her before it happens. Was the orc lady that hit on Greshy my invention? I think it was. I believe at that point in the adventure, I was actually going into book 3. I was thinking a lot about the sin and virtue points from the sin tracker. I don't know if I ever showed you guys that, actually. They have this big old sin tracker in the book where you're supposed to kind of mark every character's points. I didn't do it that way. I'd never do it that way, but I was thinking about character sins, and I figured I would try to tempt characters a little bit more throughout book 3. And I only did it a little bit. That was an example. I thought it would be a little bit fun, just to sort of present characters in a situation and see how they react. Tempting is putting it strongly. I wasn't trying to get Greshy to do anything. The character didn't have any like point to her. I should actually check if there was. It's possible that character was a named character in the text that I just forgot about. There's all of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 named characters in Turtleback Ferry. There's the innkeeper, the 2 halflings that run the tavern. I think I mentioned them. The guy who runs the smithy, and Tilia. Oh, and then one more, the mayor/priest. Not a lot of characters. I think that was just a spur of the moment thing that I was like, oh, that could be kind of interesting. Feel free to invent and add characters here. There's just not a whole lot going on. This is also on the way here. You can have a couple of references to the Sahedron tattoos. Party might see 1 or 2 on people who are boarding the ferry at the various stops. This is where you should start seeing a lot more Sahedron tattoos, since the paradise was so close by. There's also a big rumor table for Turtleback Ferry. I can show this as well. Well, there's the Turtleback Ferry map, but there's a big old table of a bunch of different rumors, and they can all some of them are true, some of them are false, some of them are like false, but are referencing some other kind of plot point. Use the table of rumors. I think they're pretty fun. They can come up in a kind of organic way if the party just happens to be at a bar or talks to an innkeeper or anything like that. Or the party can just kind of overhear. Some parties will want to investigate and talk to people and gather information. Also a great chance to use the table. And you can inject your own stuff. But I think the table is actually a really good starting point. It's all the way in the... You might miss it because it's all the way in the back in the appendix. But it's worth looking at. Okay. That's Turtleback Ferry. So, the Strange Fire Pelt event. So once the party makes their way up towards Fort Rannick to investigate what's going on with the Black Arrows, they're supposed to hear some strange noises in the forest. It's supposed to lure them over to an encounter where Kib, who is Jakardros's pet fire pelt, or animal companion fire pelt cougar, is currently being chased by one of the Kriegs. Ruckus? Yeah, Ruckus Krieg. No, not Krieg. Ruckus Grawl, sorry. And this is supposed to lead the party through the kind of event, or like to go rescue the remaining Black Arrows. I think this is a really critical event. The way the book presents it is kind of like, you hear some noises, and if the party doesn't investigate, too bad, all the Black Arrows are dead. And I feel like that's a little bit silly if the party can just totally miss this. So you probably want to make it a little bit more obvious that the party needs to go help. I mean, you can still don't ever stop your party from doing totally dumb shit, but at least do a decent job of making it not seem like it's just a random thing that the party doesn't want to be involved in. You can definitely use Ruckus taunting or laughing or like saying something at Kib in common, like that echoing through the forest. I think that can help. I feel like in third action, the party almost didn't go after it. Unless I feel like maybe Asher was the one who was ultimately the most interested. But yeah, I don't think ignoring this is a good idea. You miss out on basically all of the interesting NPCs from this part of the adventure for the whole book. And you're missing out on a lot of assistance for the capture of Fort Rannick. I think Ruckus is supposed to have on him a bunch of pieces of Black Arrow, like their sigils, I believe, on him, that Shalelu is supposed to recognize. I think Shalelu can also just recognize Kib if she sees him. It's unclear when Jakardros got Kib, but I think it's totally reasonable for her to also know who Kib is, and she can be surprised and want to give chase. It can give the NPC or the PCs a more direct incentive to want to go after it when it tries to run away. But it really depends on what your party's motivations are and whether or not they are interested in following a cougar that seems to be somewhat intelligent. It feels like the game design decision that would have been an adventure game in the 90s. Yeah. I mean, a lot of to Paizo's credit, they try to leave things fairly open-ended as far as like, the party could choose not to do this. But this is one of those cases where I'm like, well, if they choose not to do this, they're sort of choosing not to have fun. So I feel like maybe you should not allow the party to choose not to have fun. That's just me, though. Finally, we get to the Grawl farm. Oh boy. Let me take a sip of water before I get to this. Okay. The Grawl Farm is the grossest dungeon crawl I've ever had the pleasure of running. Making me thirsty. Yeah, sure, we'll call it that. It's got everything you could want. It's got cannibalism, it's got necrophilia, it's got incest, it's got shit on the floors, literal shit on the floors. It's pretty gross as written, and it, like in the book, they describe it as being like a hillbilly horror sort of thing. Feels maybe a little bit classist, so watch out a little bit there. You can adjust this section to be more silly and goofy instead of like sick and disgusting. I think the way that this particular section of the adventure is written is probably a little bit more kind of immature and edgy than a lot of the rest of what Paizo puts out tends to be. So it's sort of up to your own personal tastes of whether or not you think this is sort of fine as is. I tried to run it a little bit closer to the edgy side of things this time. I don't know if I liked it that way. I think I might like it better being a little bit sillier. Yeah, I feel like if I ran this again, I would probably lean more silly than gross. But that's just me. Know your group on this one. Again, if you know your party has issues with certain things, or the players have issues with certain things or certain topics, then maybe just don't bring them up. It's not important. Also, we have thankfully a goblin here to protect us from female presenting nipples. By the way. Right, so get your U.S. Southern drawl ready. There are a lot of silly... They're supposed to be very, very Southern hick type of characters. Enjoy it. Just have fun with it. I think it's pretty funny. I'm a Southern boy myself, but I don't think it's terribly offensive. I think it's quite funny. They're all just supposed to be a bunch of big old gross, nasty, awful people, and you can just kind of play them that way. They've all got names, doesn't really matter, but they are funny names to say. So I think I went out of my way to have a lot of the characters say their own names or get called out by Mammy Grawl from other parts of the house. It's a very Southern thing to do that, by the way. There are a lot of traps in here. I think one of the ogres or ogrekin in particular has been setting traps all around the house. Make sure you're using them. It's one of the very, very few locations in the entire adventure that even has traps. I tried to sprinkle in more traps all along the adventure, but it just doesn't come up that much, so it's fun to use when you have them. You might even want to move some of the hazards into the rooms that have encounters just to make them a little bit more interesting. But yeah, that is the farm. Oh, right. There's also the barn, which is where you encounter and rescue the black arrows. It's up to you how you want to, whether or not you want the party to go that way first or the other way. I think I allowed the party... it doesn't matter. Literally just let your party do whatever. If you want them to rescue the Black Arrows first and then fight Mammy Grawl, that's reasonable. You can just have Kib lead you over in that direction. If not, just let the party explore it as they will. But if they try to leave without rescuing the Black Arrows, then Kib should probably more directly go to try to rescue them. All right. So the Black Arrows themselves. So first off, we have Mr. Jakardros Sovark and his Firepelt Cougar Kib. He is Shalalu's deadbeat stepfather. He night's watched himself because he is very much a sad boy after Shalalu's mother's death. To a certain dragon, a green dragon who is of mild import. um, who is also a little bit of a sir not appearing in this AP. His drama with Shalelu is sort of the kind of main fun character interaction that you can bring out with him. He's also the most likely candidate to become the Black Arrow's new leader, given that there's only like 3 of them left. I like to play him as like being kind of dejected and resigned to his fate, but the heroes have a chance to change his mind on that and make him see the world in a new light. He should really be moldable by your PCs. The way the book is written, he's more supposed to be molded by reconciling with Shalelu, but you should try to have the party play a big role in that if they want to. It should be all about how the party interacts with their situation. By default, I think Jakardros and Shalelu should not really work things out on their own. It should have to be the party interjecting themselves to make them do something. As far as running him goes, I would his default is to be run as a ranger with an animal companion. If he dies, or if you just prefer, for the sake of having 2 characters, you can make Kib just a totally separate solo creature without running minion rules, and without needing commands. That's fine too. It's up to you. Companion sort of simplifies the turn order, but if you'd rather give the party a little bit more power, then separating them out is fine as well. Next up, we have Vale Temros. He is pretty much a blank slate as far as the lore goes. I think his entire story is like, he was born a Black Arrow, his parents were Black Arrows, they got killed when he was young or something. And he likes engineering for some reason. There's not much to him. Literally do whatever you want with him. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he is the second of exactly 3 black people in this adventure. And so, I don't know, make him cool. He's the only one of the 3 who's like unequivocally good. So I think you should just make him cool as fuck, give him infinite AC, make him do crits all the time. Just fudge like mad. You have my blessing if you roll behind a screen. Him, Oric, and who else? Oric's not black. Oric is pretty white, I'm pretty sure. Unless I dramatically misinterpreted his art. The other 2 characters are the ones there in the bottom. Leary, who was what was her name? Nualia's kind of assistant, black mage. She is written as like incredibly evil. She is like fairly malicious as written. I usually run her as a bit more nebulous than that. And then High Lady Athroxis, who shows up in book 5. She is the leader of the Wing of Wrath. I also like to run her as not necessarily evil. I like her just to be more of like a strict badass, who's a bit more of like a cool rival type character than a strictly evil, I'm gonna kill you guys because I love killing sort of person. She gets in the party's way, but does so honorably. In any case, back to Vale. Blank slate, cool guy. Run him as a Flurry Ranger, probably, or a fighter. He's got to use his twin axes. Do whatever you can to make that work. He is also the person of the group who knows all of the details of the fort. I think he was friends with like one of the people who, one of the engineers of the fort. So he just knows all the secret rooms and stuff. So he should be the source of a lot of the kind of map information. Caven Windstrike is an interesting character. He is written as a traitor. He has already betrayed the Black Arrows and sort of accidentally ended up as a slave to the Grawl family here. the books very strongly suggest that he is already fully charmed. He has made up his mind. He is basically going to backstab the party at his earliest convenience. I think it's totally fine to make him a lot more flexible than that. I think his redemption can be interesting. In our party in third action, we had a redeemer in the group, so I wanted to make sure that that was available as an option. Because what is a redeemer if they can't redeem any of the villain characters? And what he has done as far as like being a bad person was, I think he told Lucretia when the commander was going to be away, or help, or like basically told her like when a patrol was going to be gone or something. That left a big opportunity for the fortress to get attacked. So he did cause a lot of his allies to get killed, but it's the sort of thing that you can kind of fudge into like being not necessarily a huge deal. Maybe he didn't know what Lucretia was doing. He doesn't necessarily need to have had anything against the rest of the Black Arrows. He might have been just as surprised as everyone else when the ogres showed up. So run him to whatever degree you want to run him, as either a strictly evil person who is all aboard that SNAS, ready to hit that SNAS at any moment, or if you want him to be a emotional sad boy who really regrets his decision but is afraid to admit it. I like to run him closer to the latter, but shrug. He lived in third action. I think he died at the Lucretia encounter, where he turns to, I think if he encounters Lucretia, he's supposed to kind of immediately turn tail and join forces with her. So I think that's what I did the first time I ran it, and he died right away. You can play him however you want. Obviously, this man looks like a swashbuckler. I don't think Swashbuckler was out when in first edition, even when Rise of the Runelords Anniversary Edition came out. Otherwise, I feel like he should be a swashbuckler. He looks like a swashbuckler. You could also play him as a rogue, as written. I think he's like a fighter rogue or something. Or you can just make him a ranger like all the other Black Arrows. If he joins up with the players, he has an opportunity to explain a lot of Lucretia's plot, if he's able to turn. Yeah. Oh, more water. Okay. Retaking Fort Rannick is that part 2? Yeah, I guess we were just into part 2. So yeah. So now that the party has hopefully rescued some of the Black Arrows, maybe they have survived, maybe they didn't, maybe the party skipped over that, who knows. They should see Fort Rannick. So let's talk about running an assault a little bit. I think assaults are a little bit different from running a pure infiltration. The goal of an assault is ultimately to kind of eliminate the enemy from a location, whereas an infiltration is more about like sneaking in to like do a specific thing. They're kind of similar, but an infiltration sort of has the goal of not getting into any fights at all, whereas an assault has ultimately the idea of an assault is to do a fight, just in a way that's beneficial to the party. And you're trying to kind of minimize as many sort of dangerous factors as you can to make the fight go as smoothly as possible. So I kind of view an assault as having some kind of concrete steps. The first one is the gathering information phase. It can be literally using the gather information skill in first edition, or the task, diplomacy task in second edition, talking to people, asking information about the location that you're trying to assault. NPCs that are with the party should be able to offer up interesting details. This map here, I think, is drawn by Vale and given to the party. It's in the book sideways, so make sure to turn it right side up. It's got the little north on there, but make sure you sort of give the party as enough information from the NPCs. You can have them have the have the NPCs ready to answer guided questions if needed. They shouldn't divulge literally everything offhand. Make sure the party does have to ask something. But yeah. Here's a chance for using stealth checks, or a way you can use stealth checks to gather information. This is just something I've been thinking about. I don't think I did it this way this last time, but it's something I want to try next time I have to run an assault or an infiltration, is that you can run kind of gather information stealth checks as kind of like a downtime activity. Where success and critical success mean you get information or a lot of information about some particular aspect that you're trying to sneak around. Say you have a party member that wants to find out about the patrols on the outside of the fortress. You can say, okay, yeah, give me a stealth check to do this as an exploration activity. And on failure, you don't get caught, but you get kind of like close to getting caught and have to leave, and you don't get much information. And on a critical failure, that's when you're actually caught, but not in like a permanent way. You still get away. You allow the player to, you say to the player, this stealth check is not going to get you like guaranteed to be caught, but if you crit fail, then you are alerting the enemies to your presence, and they might adjust or have some information now that you're trying to do something. So that's a way to kind of adjust and have an option for players to gather information quickly without necessarily going into full encounter mode. It's an alternative. I think the more you go into encounter mode to try to handle stuff like stealth, and the more times you make the players roll stealth, say, to try to do an activity that they want to get done, the more likely it is they're going to fail, because every single time you roll a die, there's a chance you get a natural one, right? So the more times you roll, the more opportunities you have to crit fail. So I would try to keep those roll counts to a minimum, and just find ways you can like kind of summarize the information gathering process. Yeah, that's kind of just a rough tip. I just try to look for those. The more I've run these infiltrations and assaults, the more I've been like, yeah, I think that you could probably speed up this phase a little bit rather than going into full-blown encounter mode. There's also the infiltration system that's in the GMG. I think I've mentioned it before. I believe there's a first edition version of it as well. I don't remember which book it's in. Those can work for this sort of thing, but I feel like those are more about like sort of organizational infiltration rather than trying to break into a specific place to do something. So you might be able to get some inspiration from reading those. They find out which guards take the bathroom breaks more frequently and which ones show up tipsy often. Yes. That's a good potential critical success to find out specific guard behaviors. Okay, so then there's the actual planning phase. This is the chance for NPCs to nudge the players if they're with different perspectives that they might have. If you have multiple NPCs, I like to have them give differing opinions rather than if all the NPCs say the exact same thing, or like all have one opinion, then that tends to sound like it's the GM's opinion, and the players will then read into that as they will. I prefer to have the NPCs have differing opinions, usually all reasonable ones, but it gives like a couple of options to the party without making it seem like one of the options is like strictly better for some reason. I also like to do a session break after the planning phase, but before beginning the setup part, because you might not have... players will sleep on it, have more ideas, they'll want to talk about it and think about it, and maybe talk offline in group chats and stuff. Give your players a chance to have like a full extended discussion if they want about what they want to do. You could actually do this before the planning phase starts and then have the planning after that and then go immediately into setup during one session. That might actually be a better way to do it, actually. Sometimes you can have things where like the party does their planning in game, session break happens, more planning discussion happens offline, but nothing really gets settled, and then they get back and then have to start the planning process again. So maybe my idea here is actually flawed, and maybe you've seen that actually happen in third action sometimes. So maybe I'm actually wrong there. Your mileage may vary, we'll say that. Yeah, just, I guess, be cognizant of it. Watch what your party does and report back to me. If you find it's better to just have the planning and the setup phase all kind of happen together, maybe that's actually the more ideal way to do it. Yeah, I don't know. Shrug, I'm just a guy. Okay, so yeah, that's just kind of how I do it. So the setup phase itself is pretty simple. You kind of get everyone up into position, basically up to the point that you would need to start an encounter mode, which basically means putting everyone on the battle map as close as reasonable before you need to actually roll initiative. Let the party choose their own positions within some range of places, and then get things started. Usually the execution phase is usually it's we roll initiative and see if you could do the thing. It really depends on what the party's exact plan is. It might not need initiative. Try not to go into initiative until there's actually like a potential enemy or somebody who could see what's going on. Let's see. Make sure that you focus during the execution phase. Just focus on the PCs and what they're doing. Try to get the PCs to also stay together if possible. Again, I mean, everybody knows the adages about splitting the party. Splitting the party makes encounter balance really weird and difficult. It increases a lot of workload on your end. That's a good reason to split at least split the setup from the actual encounter session. So maybe you do want to do planning and setup and then break and then do the encounter the next session. But it can give you, as the GM, some time to react to what the party's planned to do. So yeah, I'll actually say that. Instead of Schrodinger's planning, how about you do planning and setup all in one session, break, and then that allows the GM some time to sort of plan what the enemies are going to potentially do. You should definitely put a break either after the planning or after the setup, one of those two. Sometimes the party will say things, or will come up with things like, we're all gonna climb the mountain and parachute down onto the fortress. And the book's not really written for that. So if the party does do that, you need to figure out what is that going to mean, come up with some ideas of how the ogres are going to react to seeing parachutes fall down on them, and figure out where the ranged weapons are, that sort of thing. So you might have to give yourself some room to make adjustments in between sessions. Sorry, my point before was that you want to focus on what the PCs are doing. If they've got the NPCs doing sort of other components of plans, like creating distractions or running decoys, that sort of thing, generally try to just let those NPCs sort of succeed at what they're doing automatically. You could fake roll it if you want. I would only roll it if they were particularly complex plans or like stupid plans that have like some really weird chance of like, or that are like really unlikely to work. What does fake roll it mean? I mean a thing that GMs sometimes do where if you're playing behind a screen, you might have already decided in your head that this action is going to succeed, but you pretend to roll it, look at the dice and go, oh, it was a success. It happens sometimes. I try not to do it. I used to do it a lot more. But I instead try to train myself to, if I don't want it to be a potential failure, then I just don't roll and I just allow it to be a success. That's fine. You can do that as the GM. I give you permission to sometimes allow things to just be successes without any rolls. I think that's actually better than doing the fake roll thing. Yeah, I don't know. The older you get, the more you become okay with just saying sometimes things are just fine to work and you don't have to roll for it. Have I ever had to have something happen to push the players along because they couldn't decide what to do? Yes. Yes, all the time. If the players can't decide what they want to do, I mean, NPCs help a lot. If there are NPCs around, they can force ideas. If the party... So yes, NPCs can offer stronger opinions on ideas the more indecisive the party is being. If it's the case that the party is like arguing about a couple of different approaches, what you can also do as the GM is say time passes. You don't have to, but sometimes GMs allow players to like talk for 3 hours about something out of character and then decide it as if the characters had decided it within 3 seconds, or like had just like a very quick conversation about it. I also give you permission to say that 5 hours have passed. If the players start to see that time is passing as they're bickering about something, or have not decided that something is going to happen, the more time that passes in game, the more they might get stressed about like, oh shit, people are probably going to die if we don't decide something. We need to decide something. So I think that can help a lot. I think time pressure is actually a really good motivator for getting people to decide on something. It really depends on your group dynamics. If your group is really argumentative, or has a lot of personalities that are butt heads with each other, then it gets hard to do things like this. And I think there comes a point where you actually realize as the GM that if you want the group to keep playing together, then maybe you just need to decide for them. And either that means have some kind of forcing function event occur, like, oh, sorry, you didn't actually need to plan this at all, they're attacking you instead. That can be an option. Or you can have, again, one of the NPCs can just be like, I'm doing it my way, fuck you guys, I'm out, and just leave. And go to do things their own way. And that can also force the party to do things. Usually it isn't butting heads with my group. They just don't want to commit to anything. That's yes, that is also I think that's more likely than the butting heads. I've seen the butting heads thing happen. Yeah, if the party is just indecisive, yeah, I mean, if they're super indecisive and are not having fun being indecisive about it, then I would maybe just try to avoid this type of event where you kind of, like, that style of group may prefer to just have things happen to them, or have them be presented with, like, here's the path that you need to do. Or to have an NPC say, no, I'm pretty sure this is the best way. It's the path of least resistance. It's definitely the best idea. We should definitely do this. And imply that other directions are probably worse choices. You can give the party things like augury. You can give the party hints from the gods in other ways. I think there's a few different ways that you can try to put the party a bit more on rails. But yeah, sometimes some parties do just need more rails. That's fine. I don't think that's like a failing necessarily of any particular party. I think non-linearity is maybe a bit overrated in tabletop RPGs. Not everything has to be fully open world, choose anything, do anything. A lot of the fun of RPing is actually just how you react to situations. So you don't have to be deciding literally everything about the world. You don't have to be making major, like, plot point, like, what direction do we go decisions. It can just be about the smaller, how does your character react to this character's death? How does your character behave in this situation? That is a totally valid and fun part of play. Your fun does not have to come from choosing whether to assault the fortress directly or sneak inside. That doesn't have to be. Yeah, do what your group finds fun. If you can kind of sense which way your group is going, I would just kind of gently nudge. It's also fine to just talk out of character. If your group is getting really indecisive, and especially sometimes groups are indecisive because they're afraid that they're making the wrong decision. It's okay as the GM to say, both of these are actually good decisions. These are both fine, they just play differently. And sometimes that'll give the party enough of a like, oh, okay, we don't have to be worried that we're like choosing the wrong thing. I think a lot of people actually get scared of being wrong in those cases. And you can just say, no, neither of these is wrong, equally likely to work. It's just about flavor. It's about how you want to approach it. And that can often free up parties to feel better about their choices. I think a lot of players don't want to, fear being doing something that'll make them look dumb or putting the party in a bad position. So as long as you're kind of clear to the players that no, these options are actually equally good, then most players would be fine with that, I think. Obviously, mileage will vary. More of running an assault. So unlike infiltrations, I think assaults are interesting because you don't actually have to succeed in one go. The enemy is usually entrenched and will stay there. So make sure that you encourage the party to have backup plans or escape plans. Let them know that you do not have to all in commit and die. You can bail. It's fine. It's fine to bail. Have the NPCs like Shalelu say something like, okay, and if we run into too much trouble, let's just run back to the forest. That's totally fine. It's totally allowable. You can also have a prearranged agreement as a GM that if everyone in the party is going to flee, then you can break initiative. You don't. Sometimes if you. I found that when the party like kind of soft agrees to run away, you often get this thing where like 2 or 3 players will be like, oh, after you. No, I'm not leaving until you leave. Oh, I'm not leaving until you leave. And they'll all just kind of go back and forth waiting on each other in initiative, slowly backing away from the fight while getting their asses beat until they're all dead. So sometimes you just have to like, okay, if you're all going to run, we'll break initiative, you could run away. If you want to have some kind of mechanical penalty for doing so, then you could have a chasing. 1E and 2E both have chase mechanics. You can use those. Pretty simple. Side note, one of my players is already suspicious of Foxwell being so nice from the boar hunt. I'm trying not to give anything away. Yes. It should be suspicious. It should be very suspicious. He's a weird guy, but he's also very nice. Make sure he gives that player like a nice little treat or something to make them like him. If you're playing in 2E, I think a +1 weapon is a pretty good option. From Mr. Foxglove. It's hard to say no to a +1. All right. Other points here. Slow assaults. If the party is going to try to do like a really slow, we attack one spot, or like we do one encounter a day, slowly chipping away at their defenses, that shouldn't be good. That should not work. It's slow, it's boring. Do not encourage boring play. It should be clear that reinforcements are coming back. So if they try this one time, the next day they should see that reinforcements are back in the spot that they just attacked, and they should feel like that's going to be a never-ending struggle. Any kind of slow assault like this should provoke responses in the enemy forces. They should get reinforcements. 2, they should kind of move creatures around in response, like shore up positions that maybe the party had snuck into one day and got caught. You feel free to add new traps and patrols, that sort of thing. Definitely prepare and ready, or have the party or have the enemies adjust to what the players are doing. It makes the world feel a little bit more lived in. But anytime they defeat any kind of like mini boss, so in this fortress, it's all the named characters, those guys aren't coming back. So don't bother, allow the party to have those wins. And also you don't need to like fully restock and reinforce everything every single day. Just a couple of extra baddies will get the party to not want to take the slowest possible approach. And also, you can also add external time pressure. That's usually, I love external time pressure. It's my favorite thing to add to APs because a lot of times they don't really have that like explicit time pressure, and the external time pressure gets the party to take some more risks, do some more aggressive things to get what they want. But all this said, you do not actually have to run assaults in a like hyper realistic way. This is the way I like to run it because I'm a simulationist. I enjoy this idea. Like I just like thinking about like, ooh, how would this work? What are the logistics of moving your units here and doing this? It's enjoyable to me. It is not enjoyable to everyone. You're also totally free to play this exactly like the book says to do it. The ogres don't hear those encounters because they assume that it's just more ogres fighting. Like, it's fine. You can have all the encounters be totally separate. You don't have to have anything be connected. You can run it as if it were just a dungeon with rooms really far apart. That's totally fine. Do what's easier for you. If you're a newer GM, I would maybe err on the side of just running them as discrete encounters, as listed. If you're a more experienced GM, I think it's a lot of fun. And if you've gotten to book 3 of Rise of the Runelords, you're kind of an experienced GM by now. So I think it's more fun to kind of spice it up a little bit, try to play with the world and make it feel a bit more like a lived-in, living dungeon. Agree with that wholeheartedly, says Adam. That's what almost killed us on the Feshnakor. So what if they decide to win by attrition? You already planned for that. Nice. Yes. The slow after you is what almost killed you guys fighting the Feshnakor. Yes. That is what happened, yes. That is exactly the sort of thing I would like to try and break by allowing the party to step out of initiative for those specific cases. That might just be a general rule that I implement in the future, is like, if the party ever wants to retreat from combat, you can all break initiative and do it. There will just maybe be a skill check chase afterwards, something like that. Something to simplify it. Okay, but yeah, it's not just you guys, Adam. I've had it happen before, where a party has gotten into a bad situation and multiple people were not running away in time, or somebody was like, "I didn't think we were running away," and like runs deeper into the combat and gets hit, and now everybody feels like they got to stick around to save the one person. Okay, so Fort Rannick specifically. Now that we're done talking about general assaults, Fort Rannick is real big. Check the scale on those maps because they are massive. It's a lot of encounters in a really big space. That's done in a very open-ended way. I like to make one big mega map for this. I had to chop it up into like 4 discrete corners for like the overworld map to fit it in Roll20. I think if I was doing it in Foundry, it might fit without doing that. Check your scale when you adapt this map as well. I think that some of the buildings might not have worked for large creatures. Be aware of that. You've got a lot of these ogres. They're all large creatures. They need to be able to move around. They can squeeze through small doors and stuff just fine, but just be aware that the halls need to be big enough for the ogres to actually move around in. Of note, on the Fort Rannick map, the waterfall is almost certainly where the party is. If the party wants to get in kind of stealthily, they're probably going to try to get in through the waterfall entrance. So make sure you've got that ready and you sort of know how that's going to work, along with any rules for like swimming or climbing to get into it. I think both of my parties happen to go that way ultimately. The book mentions this Sahedron Medallion Gambit that you could, as players, just walk up to the gates, and if you're wearing Sahedron medallions, the ogres will be like, "Oh, I guess you're wearing Sahedron medallions. You must be friend of Lucretia," and they'll just let you in, which is quite funny. But it's incredibly unlikely to happen. Do not expect it to happen. There's literally no reason why the party would necessarily like think to be wearing the Sahedron medallions here. They might not even be wearing it. But in case it happens, note which characters are wearing the Sahedron medallions. Take a quick sneak peek before they approach, just to look at their character sheets. See if any of them have the Sahedron medallions on. Mark those down in your notes so that you know who's got them kind of publicly displayed. That way, if they do happen to like approach the gate, then you can have one of the ogres be like, "Oh, friends of Lucretia," before the party actually reacts or says anything. I think that's kind of a fun way to handle that. Slow attrition reminds me of World of Warcraft areas where if you wait too long, all the enemies respawn and TPK the group. Yep, that is exactly the idea. Have you had to redraw mini-maps due to the first edition PDF not being very VTT friendly? Yep, that is exactly. So this map here, I completely redrew. I kind of traced it. I think the original is all in pieces. I tried to roughly assemble the Fort Rannick map into one super map based on a combination of I tried to scale them all together and I don't know, attach them all in Photoshop basically, and then trace over them. I also used this map here. I think uses a bunch of pieces from Yui Kami, who's like a big Roll20 kind of cutesy art style tokens. So I assembled these maps from that. Nowadays, I would just do it all in. I'd probably just do it all in Dungeon Draft. They have a trace feature where you can import the picture. I'd probably make a big overlay or big kind of copy paste map in Photoshop, blur it out, and then trace over it in Dungeon Draft to make the exact maps. But yeah, unless the map is like 1-to-1 scale, almost all of the like anything in book 3 onwards, I think I've had to basically make a new version of the map. What you can do, what I did sometimes, was take the base map in Photoshop, blur it just slightly, add a filter to it, to kind of get rid of the existing lines, and then use that as is. And that kind of works. Sometimes you can just blur the map a little bit and like mosaic filter, or I forget what the other filters are that I've used. But you can kind of mess with them a little bit to try to make them a little bit grainier and remove the existing grid lines, and then let Foundry or Roll20 put their grid lines on top, and that's generally way better. But yeah, these days I would say remake it in Dungeon Draft if you can. It sucks, but I mean, you get used to building stuff in Dungeon Draft, so it's fine. But yeah, basically every single map I think I've had to redo at this point. Or also, you can totally find plenty of other people have already had these issues. You can totally just find these maps, existing versions of these maps, just on the internet. People have their own versions of Fort Rannick, etc., that are already perfectly VTT scaled. It's just a matter of whether or not you like their particular art styles. I give you permission to mix art styles. Oops. What have I done? Oh, I've gone to the next page. Yeah, this is just the collection of the maps here that I made for this, or assembled for this, including the sort of basement area with Lucretia's room, and then the kind of upper floor of Fort Rannick. Yeah, it's a big ass map. You rescind permission, no mixing art styles? Yes, no, you can. I say that you can mix art styles if you must. It's totally fine. I do not care. Do what saves you time as the GM. Your ungrateful players don't matter. All that matters is you. I mean, do as much as you want. I, for this, really felt like doing the big fun map. I don't remember how I ran this in person. I probably did I print stuff? I don't remember. When I ran this in person, I used a mix of Dwarven Forge, Chessex mats, printed maps. I went to FedEx a lot to just, or Kinko's rather, FedEx Kinko's, to just print out big ass maps, or biggest like blown up versions of the maps. Yeah, I do a mix. I do a little bit of everything. If there's a way to run a map, I've probably done it. Okay. Is there anything else here that I missed? Let's see. A good point here is make sure that it's clear to the players. Jakardros can mention it, or any of the NPCs can really mention it, that killing the boss, Jagrath, should be the goal. The goal should not be a full clear of like killing literally every ogre here. It should be somewhat known that the ogres very much respect their leader, and if he were to fall, they would all give up hope. That's kind of how you can stop this from being a very slow, like, attrition battle, or a we need to slowly walk through every single room to clear out everything. If you let the players know that killing the boss is the only goal, then they can make a plan that's more focused on just doing that. And I think it's a lot more fun than trying to kill out literally everyone. It makes things like decoys and stuff more exciting and interesting. If you're doing EXP, just give them the EXP for like the entire fortress all at once. Even if they were just to zoom in and snipe Jagrath, totally fine. Just give them the EXP for the kill, as if they had killed everyone. The only burnable building here is this one wood building, the new barracks. If you notice, I like to point out which buildings are burnable because I have players that love burning shit. And oh yeah, remember the rain. It's still raining for this entire fortress encounter. So keep using the rain mechanics. It's fun. The Krieg clan. I put all the names that were listed in the book. We have Carlylop, Jolly, Mink Tuck, Gragavan, Silas, Dorella, Harlock, also known as Hookmaw, who is this fellow over here. We have Dorella, she's the mage over here in the back. Malagus, who's this guy, who I think is Jagrath's son, and then Jagrath himself. There's so many of them. They've got a lot of story details and stuff, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter. Please do not stress over the weird amount of detail that the Kriegs have written about them. There are a lot of named characters. Every single one of them has a couple paragraphs about how Jagrath abused them as a child and what that means for their personality today and why they're doing certain things. It's fun to read. It's very amusing. The players won't know any of it. They will never find out. I can't really think of good ways to organically introduce that unless the players are giants. If any of the players happen to be ogres, maybe they'd find out. If the players were really nice to the ogres and managed to, become friends with one or two of them, maybe they'd find out. But the backstory for these NPCs, these are some of the most forgettable enemies. They're fun. They're fun, silly enemies. Nobody's gonna remember any of them. Your party probably won't fight half of them. It's totally fine. I give you permission to not bother. I've attempted reading all of the anniversary editions, so much backstory for so many NPCs. Yes, this is the Paizo special. It's cool. It's actually one of those really cool things for a GM because it's really fun to read all the stories. But I do think it kind of one of the things I felt a lot when I ran through the adventure the first time, and it was something I was sort of trying to fix when I was running it the second time, was like, oh, there's a lot of random backstory for these NPCs that never comes up. And I feel bad about it when like a character who is named shows up, fights, dies, and like none of their backstory is ever going to get out to the party. And I'm like, oh, I feel sad about that. But it's okay to feel sad about it. It's also okay that the party doesn't learn about it. It's fun to add it in where you can, but I think the Kriegs are a little bit too much. There's just a lot of them. Their backstories are they're funny. They're actually quite funny, but they're very, very irrelevant. You really don't have to bother with figuring out their whole family dynamic and sorting it out. The important thing is mostly that the grunts are very stupid. They're supposed to be very stupid. All of the named characters are really more just setups for like interesting specific kind of encounters. Like with Hook Maw and his metal jaw biting people. I think that's fun. And the one ogre that can use magic. It's totally okay to just play them as just like, I don't know, it's just an ogre that's doing an encounter. That's fine. Important to know anytime you're doing an infiltration or an assault, know the total number of characters, know where they are generally, but feel free to move them around as you want over the course of the adventure, or over the course of the encounter. Where they are specifically in the AP doesn't matter. You can move them around, tweak them as you want. Having them patrol rooms or move between places is totally fine, totally reasonable thing to do. Lucretia, she is one of my favorite villains in this AP. She's a bad bitch. She's fun to play. She's sinister. She's cunning. She is like strictly evil. She has no remorse for any of the actions she's taken. She does not have to fight fair. She's just a lot of fun. She is really the cooler Zanisha. Make sure that she has lots of dimension doors prepped. I think in the original she had like 4 innate dimension doors per day on top of her regular spellcasting. Make sure I just run her as like a kind of a normal spellcaster rather than giving her a bunch of innate spells. I think I ran her as I might have gone back and forth on her being a sorcerer versus a wizard. I think I made her a wizard. In that she had prepared spells. Make sure that she has at least 3 or 4 slots just dedicated to higher level dimension doors. It's not really explicitly listed as her tactic, but I feel like it feels like her signature thing to me. It's how I run her. I think she should generally prefer to fight with allies around. I say pawns here. This is probably how she thinks of them. She's first supposed to be encountered and possibly killed in the basement of Fort Rannick. And I think that's kind of lame, as is. She's written to try to escape at like 20 HP. I would just have her escape right away. She sees a group of party members. Unless your party is literally one person, I think she should probably look at that and go, I don't like those odds, and then people leave. Like, there's no reason why she should stay and fight with that. I would have her flee up to the roof, let Jagrath know, or like interact with Jagrath, and have her and Jagrath be like a roof encounter. It's so much more epic that way. I think that's what I did in third action. I think that's much more cool than the Jagrath separate fight or Lucretia separate fight. And even then, when she's with Jagrath, she should also run away as soon as things look even remotely bad. She does not need to stick around for that. She can then run into the party again with Barl, and if you want, or she could leave to go with, hang out with Mock Mirian. If you have her in the encounter with Barl, also it's fine to let her die there. By that point, I think the party is very annoyed with her dimension dooring all the time, and so I think it's funnier to just have her keep dimension dooring. It is hilarious. It causes the party to look up backup options. I think in both campaigns, I think the party explicitly took options to nullify dimension doors when they could, just because they were sick of specifically Lucretia escaping. I think she's really fun. She's a great recurring encounter. One of the things I did in third action, because I thought it was funny, it didn't really do that much to the party, but the Nightmare spell requires you to know a character's name. I like to have her try to figure out the party's names in the first encounter, so that later on she can keep harassing them with nightmares on random days when she feels like it. It's just kind of a fun, spooky thing that you can do. She can also send hired assassins. That's a fun option. Just ways to make Lucretia more sinister and more annoying to the party is always great. I love her. She's excellent. Okay, another sip of water, and then the flood. Flood time. So yeah, Down Comes the Rain, part 3. This one is actually, so this is the next event or the next part of the book. It kind of implies that you could put this wherever you want in this part of the adventure, or anywhere in the book, really. I think it works fine where it is, basically right after the party has cleared out Fort Rannick. Give the party a little bit of time to sort of clean up Fort Rannick, help out the Black Arrows with setting everything up again, getting watches started, starting some recruitment for other Black Arrows. Actually, random note, it's also okay to insert more Black Arrows. I forgot to mention this earlier. I don't remember if I did it in third action, but I think I did it the first time I ran it. I believe I added some random generic Black Arrows, because I don't think they're supposed to be literally 3. So it's totally fine to have more Black Arrows around that maybe either are... Oh, I think there are some captured in the basement, maybe, of the fortress that might still be alive. But yeah, it's okay to have a few more lying around in wait. But in any case, so the flood itself is supposed to be this kind of big set piece, kind of pseudo boss encounter, and then it follows up with a trick to Skull's Crossing, which is a bit of a mini dungeon. This is the big culmination of what all the rain foreshadowing has been about. This is the dam is going to break partially. A big rush of water comes flooding part of Turtleback, and as a portent of a bigger flood that's about to happen if the Skull's Crossing dam manages to actually break under the weight of all this weight and pressure of all this water. So you can have this happen either before or after the Haunted Heart. If you want to give the party a bit more of an emotional break time after having done Fort Rannick, then I would run this after Haunted Heart. Basically, you give the party a chance to go find out about Lamatar Baden, what happened to him, and then prompt them with, the town's flooded. And you can just have the town flood as they're coming back from the fens or something, or the glen, rather, the Shimmer Glens. If you want it to happen immediately, then you can probably just have somebody run to Fort Rannick and be like, "Help! The water is flooding the town," and that'll get the party to go check out Turtleback right away. That becomes more of a faster pace kind of game. We're like, "Oh shit, we just did this one thing, and now another thing's happening. We got to go see." But yeah, it depends on what tone you're sort of going for. Just make sure that you allow the players at least the night's rest from the end of the Fort Rannick day, and try to, with all kind of big adventure things about to like any kind of big shift in what the party is expected to do, try to give the party a chance to finish their daily prep with the knowledge of what they're going to be going into. That way, if you've got any wizards, witches, druids, clerics, etc. in your party that are prepared casters, they have a chance to prepare their spells. Black Maga Rises. This one's a fun encounter. I like Black Maga. She is silly. She's kind of random. Some of the rumors in town, a lot of the people in town actually think that this legendary Black Maga creature was the one that sunk the paradise. She wasn't. She was in the Storefall, in that lake, and she fell out of the dam when it broke. But so there's like a little bit of foreshadowing that you can do with the rumors before this happens. It's a little bit random, this event, but it is very fun and it's very epic feeling. Definitely make sure the rain is pouring. Use a flooded, in the background there I have a flooded version of the map that I made of Turtleback Ferry. They've got some like dotted line versions of the map. It's much cooler if you make an actual like blue, like flood the town with some water. Have rain effects going. There's a school children event where you've got to save the school kids who are maybe getting swept away in the water. I've mentioned this before. It's a fun event to make sure you have so that the party gets a chance to kind of be big damn heroes, help some little people out before the big fight happens. The fight itself is supposed to be really scary. It's actually framed in first edition as a fight that's impossible, or potentially impossible, and that the party won't be able to kill it. I run it with like a little bit less. I think by default she's supposed to have a lot of like resistances and nullifies a lot of damage types and stuff. I just remove those, allow the party to hurt her a lot, and then have her get away. But seemingly like fatally or like mortally wounded. I think that's a lot more fun than big ass monster shows up, party can barely damage her, and then she leaves after 6 turns or whatever it says in the book. I like it to be a kind of a slightly more doable encounter than what the book kind of implies that it's supposed to be. Definitely don't play her optimally. Depends on, in second edition, it really depends on how you stat her out. I think I statted her out as like a slightly higher than severe, like maybe a level higher than what would normally be a severe encounter for the party. So she hits pretty hard. She's got really high AC. She's really dangerous. I just removed some of the DR stuff from her. But if you play her too optimally, then she might just kill everyone. You don't want to kill everyone. You want to cause a lot of problems, make it seem really scary, but ultimately allow the party to be big damn heroes here. Unless you want to kill everybody, that's fine too. I don't know. This is your GM style, your game. Your rules. Know your swimming and underwater rules. If you're actually using the battle maps for this, you'll probably end up with characters in the water and drowning and stuff. It's really fun and epic, so knowing those rules ahead of time will help you out a lot. Make little sticky notes or note cards. Okay, once the party is done fighting Black Maga, NPCs should sort of explain, because the party might not have understood what the flood means for the town. It should be implying that the Skulls Crossing Dam could be breaking at any moment. Somebody needs to go check it out and see what's wrong. The party gets there and sees these like little skull guys. They seem like they've got little mouths where water is supposed to pour out, and think, oh, maybe we can like activate the dam to loosen the pressure here. So that's kind of the idea of what they're supposed to end up doing. It's possible that maybe some townspeople already know that the dam looks like this and can offer these suggestions. But yeah, you should kind of want the party to go straight from the Black Maga encounter to Skulls Crossing, like the next day or the same day, if they weren't too badly damaged from the Black Maga fight. There's an Etten encounter when you're walking up this the path over here. When you climb up these stairs, there's like a little cave on the way up. That one's a fun encounter. It's skippable if you like. You don't have to run it if you don't want to. But Ettins are funny. It's the only chance you get to run a weird two-headed character in this game, so I would say run it. It's pretty simple. Once you get to the Skulls Crossing sort of main building itself, I forget what it's called. That's going to be your first encounter with trolls, which is also your first encounter in this game with enemies that regenerate. So your party, if they're a newer party, they might not know about regeneration and how it works. You can have Shalelu already know and explain it to the party. But make sure you know the rules for how regeneration works. It means that the party can knock out a troll and it can still heal itself and come back to life. And if the party doesn't have fire, then this could be a really bad time for them. It's a fun set of encounters, though, so I wouldn't skip them, but it can be fairly brutal if the party's not ready. For that reason, I would I wouldn't run them as too strong, especially since there's a lot of them. You want to run them a couple levels lower than the party anyway, but they should be pretty annoying. Let's see. What Papa Grazul, finally. I know so many people wanted to talk about him, but Grazul, who lives here underneath, he's a different kind of troll. He's a water troll, I think. That the trolls that are kind of at the surface, who hang out in the main building, they like revere him, I think. They believe he's some kind of like not deity, but they view him as like a really cool guy that they look up to, and he's their boss. I guess he's their wet papa. But he either doesn't really know about them or doesn't really care about them. There's something silly in their dynamic that's, again, it's one of those things that the party is never going to find out, but it is very funny when you read it. Grazul is down below. I guess a note that I didn't say, but it's important to also note that the Skulls Crossing is one of these really big Thessalonian monuments. That was built in the time of Karzug, and it was actually built by Karzug. And in fact, the entire lake that it is damming used to be Malistoke, which was Karzug's hometown, before he nuked it, basically, and filled it with water, and then built a dam. So this is actually the site of Karzug's origins, so there's some like hints of this around the place, so make sure you kind of note the Thessalonian origins of a lot of the stonework. If you've got some dwarves in the party, be sure to add a few Thessalonian runes around. It's a good chance to kind of tease a little bit of that. But anyway, Grazul is down below. He also uses a lot of underwater tactics. He's got a big pool there. Make sure you know those and are ready for water combat. He can escape very easily, so it doesn't have to be a terribly hard encounter. I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, of course, our Grazul got away ultimately. There's an option to have him come back. I couldn't really think of a fun opportunity for him to return, but he's there potentially. He's more of a silly random boss than like anything specific, so it's hard to make him come back. But I don't know. I don't remember why everyone likes him so much. It had to be so long ago that you can't talk to his first girlfriend. He's there for the Carmel Guard. Yes. Have him show up with Black Maga? Oh, I mean, sure, I suppose. I didn't really. You could do a post-game encounter with Black Maga. That would be kind of funny. Black Maga at her like full strength. Oh yes, the Sculpion, as we called it in the game, is actually known as the Skull Ripper. Again, it's just a character name that players will never find out. It is extremely dangerous. It's written so that it can like insta decapitate people. I think I used this was actually around when I found out about what's the website? Oh boy, my brain just turned off. A series of dice-based events. This is around when I found series of dice-based events, and so I think I tried running the Skull Ripper that they had on their website, or their website on the GitHub page that someone else had contributed. I believe I just tried to run it as is, and I think I nearly one-shot gun. So that was the thing that happened. So maybe it's a little strong. Be careful with it. It's pretty nasty. I think it's possible it was balanced correctly. I don't remember. The party ran away from it and didn't bother dealing with it any further. I think there's some like interesting lore in the room that it's in, and some gear maybe. I forget. It's not super important. But if the party does see a lot of that stuff, I think they get some more Thassalon information if they manage to interact with it more. I should actually turn to that page in the book because I don't remember. And the other thing is, the other thing that's here is a Vaxial. So to activate the Skull's Crossing, it turns out the Skull's Crossing is supposed to have activated on its own because it had these two demons or devils. Pythians. No, Pythians are demons, right? I don't know. Whatever they are. It had two Pit Fiends that have been slowly gaining negative levels as every time the dam needs to activate, it drains the two devils or two Pit Fiends of their energy and then activates the dam. By this point, one of the two Pit Fiends is already completely dead, and the other one is kind of on his last legs and has barely enough energy. It's supposed to be a sort of like moral conundrum of whether or not the party lets this demon free and whether or not they can trust it or feel bad for it, and what they offer as sacrifice in its place. I think this is a really cool RP mechanic, or like it's a mechanic, sure. It's a cool RP scenario. The way it's written in the book, they're kind of mean about it. They're like, ha ha ha, the party should never trust a Pit Fiend. What are they, stupid? And they kind of write it where like, if they set a Vaxial free, then he might help them a little bit, but he's ultimately going to betray them for seeing him in his like weak and sad state, and he'll be really pissy about it. But I think that's lame. I think he should just be helpful. It's fun to have a weird ally that's non-conventional. So if the party does go out of their way to free him, I think they have to give up something of their own to activate the dam anyway. So I think it's a good opportunity to allow them to just have a cool ally later on. I think a great place for him to show up is actually at the final encounter, when the party is ascending the pinnacle of avarice. Is a great time for a Vaxial to show up, now fully powered up and like level 18 or 19. Just alongside the party to thank them for their deeds and to help them kick Karzug's ass. That is an ideal place to put him. I dreamed about putting him there, but I think Greshey just killed him outright, sadly. In third action. One of my players can't handle horror or gore, so I'm going for a Monty Python in the Holy Grail feel. How well do you think I can mesh it with Rise of the Runelords? I think you can mesh it pretty well. I think the biggest horror gore spots are basically the manor in book 2, and the murder mystery, basically book 2, and then the Grawl farm here in book 3. I think you can adjust most of the Grawl farm to be much more silly and goofy than it is gross and horrifying. Like, don't read the room descriptions as they're written. I have actually talked about that, about the the room description blocks that they have in the books, but just change the descriptions to not be so visceral. Those are the only two like kind of gross spots in the whole book. I don't think there's any other majorly disgusting places. There is in book 6. There is the whole thing with the Wendigo / Windwalker, which is the other kind of horror scenario, which you also could either skip or run differently. It can just as easily be ghosts, and you could definitely change it. I don't think it's very hard to change that section. I could talk about it more when I get there in book 6, but I don't think it's that hard to adjust the horror and gore out of this. Most of the adventure tends to be kind of big damn hero stuff, so I don't think it's like there's not really that much that has to be strictly horror or strictly gore. It's just sometimes you'll get one of the authors in the books who will be like, oh yeah, I want to do a horror section because I love horror, but it's not a main theme of the story, so it doesn't matter. If you were reading through book 2, book 2 it's basically book 2, this one section in book 3, and then the first part of book 6. And that's basically it. If you're able to adjust book 2, you'll be able to adjust book 6 as well. That section is basically a haunted house with cannibals, or ghosts of cannibals. You could very easily convert it to just be, it's just spooky ghosts. Aren't they silly and weird? And isn't it sad that they've killed each other or whatever? But yeah, you can definitely adjust it, I think. Anyway, that's Skull's Crossing. I knew it was a good idea not trying to do 2 books in one night. Okay, The Haunted Heart. Part 4. This is... right, so the Skull's Crossing thing is sort of a direct lead-in from the Black Maga event. The purpose of doing these 2 is to deactivate the dam so the town is relatively safe for a while, but the party still needs to find the source of all the rains and what's causing it. The Haunted Heart is the party basically finding out about what happened to the commander of the Black Arrows. Where did he go? He is having a love affair with Miriana, a naiad, a lake spirit, and it was on one of his visits out to see her that he was attacked by the Kriegs and Lucretia, and I guess both of them were killed, and maybe they weren't both killed. Maybe just Lamatar was killed and taken away, and Miriana died of a broken heart or something sad, and became really angry about it. So prompting the players for this event, the Black Arrows should want to know what happened to Lamatar. They might already be like, yeah, the Kriegs are probably up at Hook Mountain. We should assault them. But because this event exists, I think you should have them be like, but first, before we do that, we need to find where'd the captain go? We didn't find his body anywhere. We need to find him to lead us. So that's basically your prompt for doing this. Yap here. I think Yap has art in the original Rise of the Runelords that he doesn't have in the Anniversary Edition. And actually, that's true of a lot of characters. There's a lot of random characters that have alternate art that was in the original prints of Rise of the Runelords that doesn't exist in the Anniversary Edition. A bunch of characters have alternate character portraits if you Google them, like Jakardros, etc. That's if you're wondering why those pictures exist. I think it's because of those books. Like the original printings of the books, and then they kind of redid the art to be close to Wayne Reynolds' style later on. But a couple of characters, I think, like Yap, don't show up again. I'm pretty sure this is the official art of Yap. But Maybe not. Maybe it's just a random pixie that I got. It's what I had in my folder for Yap. So, in any case, the love letters between Lamatar and Miriana or the poems, I think, should be the perfect clue to get the party to want to go down to the Shimmer Glens. If they're not putting that together, then you can have Yap come up to them, like the book says. This quest is supposed to lead them eventually to the Hook Mountain stronghold, where they'll basically fight the boss encounter of the book. The Shimmerglens themselves don't have any like real map of them. I think there's a Turtleback Hinterlands map that you can kind of loosely use, but the Shimmerglens themselves don't have any. And luckily there's no like specific encounters there, but you might want to make encounter maps for the individual there's like individual events that occur during this that you might want to have individual maps for, just to if your party likes those over doing Theater of the Mind. If your party's cool with Theater of the Mind, it doesn't matter. These mostly you can just run these as a series of events in a kind of weird, foggy, rainy zone that's very strange and hard to navigate. They can mostly be led directly by Yap. Even if Yap didn't go out and find them, he can find them at the entrance and try to guide them to Miriana. Most of the stuff is very thematic. I don't think anything there was deadly or dangerous in any way. So feel free to skip the ones you don't want to do. For the most part, you're just trying to get the party to Miriana. If you really want, you can skip the whole kind of walk through the Shimmer Glens and have them show up right at the White Tree or whatever it's called. I forgot to write down the name. Yeah, feel free to just skip it and go straight to Miriana. I showed my players all the newer Ameko art and they all whistle. Yes, Ameko is incredibly hot and incredibly cool. That might be it's either the art from the Sandpoint book or the art from Jade Regent, which is the other AP that she majorly features in. But yeah, Heart of Sadness. That's when you actually run into Miriana herself. She should be dangerous and spooky looking, but you don't really need to have the party fight her unless they are really being quite stupid. Yap should hopefully be there with them and should hopefully like get them a sort of normal speaking audience-ish with Miriana. But Miriana is a great reward source. If the party successfully completes the quest for her, this is a great time to like give the party a really cool boon. When we did this in third action, I used this as the opportunity to convert the players from regular base rules to free archetype rules. I thought that was a really cool moment for the players to like, get a really big power boost from bringing her love back to her. It was also where the party learned the reincarnation ritual, which ultimately came in use when they were able to reincarnate Grushy very late in the adventure. Spoilers. This is also a great time. You could use it to grant any number of primal boons or feats. You don't have to make the party use feats to get them. You could just give them a feat. There's a bunch of different options for this in both first edition and second edition. Yeah, it's a cool chance to like give the party a cool, very supernatural power that they can't just get from an item. Those are very rare opportunities, I think, in APs to sort of present that sort of thing to a player. But yeah, definitely a cool moment. Try to think of something cool that your players would like, and this is a good point to give it to them. All right. Final part of the book, Harrowing the Hook. This one's pretty straightforward, actually. So once the party talks to Miriana, she tells them that Lavatar was taken away from, or like never returned to her or something like this. And maybe she could tell them that she senses him at the hook or something like that. This is kind of supposed to be another, like an impetus for them to go straight to the hook to get the body back. But also to stop whoever is pulling the strings behind the Kriegs. And if Lucretia got away, this is where Lucretia went. So the actual Hook Mountain clanhold, I believe it belonged to the Kriegs before it fell into Barl Breakbone's hands. This is also an assault kind of event, but it's much simpler. It's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of different zones. It's basically just a series of rooms off of one straight path. Make sure you've got a lot of space. Check the map scale. It's actually it should be a lot larger, I think, than it's listed as. To have multiple giants living in here, it has to be quite big. If you want the encounters to not chain into each other, you might want to sort of elongate the hallways and make them a lot more separate. A big thing that they do in Paizo Adventures is things are often really, really close to each other because they have to print the maps on like a single page in a book, and usually only on the half of a page, because that's just the space that they're working with. So a lot of times dungeons and spaces like this will be very cramped. It's totally fine to separate the rooms out a bit further if you really want to make it so that the encounters are much more strictly separate. That can be good here because I think it's kind of a set of 3 or 4 encounters, I think, and all of them can be very dangerous. Of note, I think Lamatar and Barl are the ones who are supposed to be scary. The Coven of Hags is very interesting. They don't have to be scary if you don't want them to, so they can be lower level. The Ogres and Stone Giant, the Stone Giant Assistant should be a bit scary, but the Ogres should largely be kind of weaker by this point. The party should be able to deal with them fairly easily. So don't worry about making them too strong or anything. You can kind of lower their power level compared to the players. Unless you're running in first edition, in which case just use the creatures as is. I'm mostly talking about from a second edition perspective at this point. Okay, and then at the end, so after they defeat Barl and hopefully reclaim the body of Lamatar, they should find in the hold, or they should hear it from Barl himself, that Sandpoint is going to be attacked. There's like a printed letter from Mokmurian. It's kind of like written on stone. Do I have it? I have it's signed M. Who could that be? It's Mokmurian. But yeah, it's the adventure hook for the next book, which is basically Sandpoint's about to get attacked. Or is in the process of being attacked. That definitely, at this point, if you've done your job right as a GM, the players should really like Sandpoint. They should have people at Sandpoint that they want to protect. Hearing about that will make them want to zoom back to Sandpoint as quickly as humanly possible. So they're probably going to want to drop off the body of Lamatar, get their reward for that, and then go straight to get the next boat back to Sandpoint. Or fly to Sandpoint if they've got the ability to do so, but probably still not yet. Maybe in first edition they might actually have the ability to fly or teleport by this point. I don't recall. What I like to do is actually do a time skip and just skip over the travel here, because you've already done it one way and the party is already pretty close to each other at this point. I don't think you need to do the whole travel session back. We're going to do a bunch more travel in the later books anyway, so it's fine to skip this travel. Do the shop. You can do the shopping here or out of session as well. If you're a shop preparer like me, just prepare the shops that will be available in Turtleback and Magnamar. Let them do whatever shopping they want out of character. That's fine. Is on their way back is again their sort of next big chance to get a bunch of items that they've maybe been saving up gold for. So good chance to do that there. And if you've seen Third Action, you might know that what I like to do for the starting event, the Sandpoint raid of Book 4, is I actually like to start that with the players playing as NPCs. specifically the NPCs that they've met and grown the most attached to in Sandpoint, or like the NPCs that they have the most interaction with. So that usually means some combination of like the mayor, Father Xantus, a Mako, I'm forgetting who else are options, but basically anybody in town can be an option. And I like to start with the players either already starting to defend from that raid, or like planning the defense against that raid, should it be approaching. And then I like to have the players kind of jump in just at the last minute as the fight has already started and going on, and let the players kind of jump in and like start save everybody. Yes, Sheriff Hemlock is the I might not have said him. Yes, Sheriff Hemlock is one of the people that I like to let the players play. So yeah, it's a good kind of narratively, it feels fun to just sort of hard cut from the end of this book, and then jump cut to the start of the next book, and just do all of the other in-between stuff as offline as possible. But that's just my preference. You could also just play it all out if you want and just do it normally. I forget where I got this idea from. It must have been a forum post. It's probably a forum post on the Paizo forums. Again, I like reading through the Paizo forums for these old adventures, just to learn ideas for how various other people have run it. It's what the purpose of this YouTube video is largely, to share ideas. So if you have cool ideas, also feel free in the comments. Feel free to leave interesting things that you did in your games, so that other people can gain knowledge and find better ways to run the adventure. But yeah, all that said, I think that's the end of the Hook Mountain Massacre. At this point, the parties have retaken Fort Rannick. There's some bit in the book about like rebuilding the fortress. Obviously, you're not really staying here, so there's not much of a point to doing that. If your party really wanted, you could like try to set up, I don't know, I feel like you could go Matt Mercer with it and give the party like teleportation circles maybe, and that's like a whole ordeal if you really wanted to have fortress building. It does kind of suck because it does feel like a perfect, like, yeah, we've figured out this fortress, now we've got a cool fortress to live in. But the rest of the adventure has nothing to do with this fortress, so they're not coming back to Turtleback Ferry, really. All these characters are no longer being interacted with. Feel free to do with them what you want. I suppose at this point the Kriegs are dealt with, so they don't technically need the black arrows in the near term, but they probably want some black arrows there, so it's likely that the black arrows will want to stick around and stay behind. It's more likely that Shillelagh's going to want to return with the party, hearing that Sandpoint is in danger, so she'll probably stick with them. But if the party hasn't grown any attachment to the individual characters, it's also fine if they join. But yeah. Fortress of Holding, they just need a permanent dimension door, or a dimensional door, yeah, to get to it. Just need to make them some custom spells that allow them to, like, a magnificent mansion into the fortress, or something like that. Alright. I think that's all I've got. If there's any other questions, this is where I take further questions from the chat while I sip my water. Your players are hoarders? I think all players are hoarders, TBH. I feel like it's very rare for a party not to hoard random shit. Unless they're just really starved on money, and have to sell everything. Which, sometimes what happens. I feel like I'm more of a, like, sell literally everything kind of player when I do get to play. At least in the early games, because I want money, and I know I'm not going to use that random like talisman or trinket. If it's a one-use item that's not coming up, I'd rather turn that money into a rune or something. Even if it's like or an alchemical, or give me an alchemist fire that I'll throw one time and miss with. All right, I guess chat's pretty silent. We got a lot of questions in during this time, now that I added the chat to the to the actual slideshow screens. Yeah. I suppose next week will be book 4, which should be Fortress of the Stone Giants is next. So that one's fun. I think Fortress of the Stone Giants is probably my favorite book as written. It's a little bit of an assault, kind of like this one is. It's actually quite a lot of bit of an assault. But it's got a lot of cool background lore. It's got a lot of direct lore on Thassalon. How do you handle random players not showing up consistently in game? That one's hard. It depends on your group. It depends on also if you've got a really big group or a really small group. If you have a small group, it sucks because you want everyone to be there all the time. In which case, it's hard to. You kind of have to, like, if somebody's not showing up a lot, you kind of want to replace them. Which sucks to say sometimes. But only 2 show up consistently, and the other 2 sometimes say they show up. Both are swashbucklers with shady pasts. Oh, I see. So they're easy to let drop. Yeah, I mean, if you do have 2 people who always show up all the time, then I think if you're fine with the others missing out, I mean, and that's kind of the thing. Like, I would either have like a backup game. If you really don't want to make progress in the main game while certain people are gone, then I would have a backup game and be like, okay, well, the others aren't here. Let's play this backup game. I would prefer to have a backup game than to not play at all. Because the people who show up all the time, they want to play. So having like a little mini backup game, I think can help with that. If you don't want to go through all the trouble of running a second backup game, then, I mean, if you really want to still keep those people, but you still want to play, then play. See if somebody is willing to like fill the players in who miss sessions. They can just be informed of what's going on in between. I may use an NPC to help out while they're gone, but story-wise, the swashbucklers are doing odd jobs and pulled in by their past for the time. Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way of doing it. Just allowing if it's known that they just can't make it a lot, that's fine. Then yeah, I think just having an NPC or 2 to assist is totally fine. You can also just ask those players, I think, if it's fine to run their characters for them. And it's rough if it's 2 characters, because then you have to GM 2 characters. You could allow the other 2 players to run those 2 characters. I think that's always an option. Yeah, I think having an NPC filler approach is probably the best, like a single NPC, rather than filling with 2 NPCs. Yeah, I think I'd probably just go with that option. But yeah, I think it's probably better to just have the sessions continue going and let the people who can't make it consistently Just join when they can make it. And if they can't, they can't, and maybe you can find somebody to fill, and that could be more consistent, and that'll be fine. It does suck that it's 2, though. It means that you have to kind of dynamically balance some encounters. If you had prepared for one thing and then the rest of the people don't show up. One of the players is secret villain. Sure, yeah, I mean that works too. Yeah, I mean I think what you're already doing is probably fine, as long as everybody's happy. I think the main difficulty is like, so if everybody still wants to play, they're just being flaky because that's life and they just can't help it. That's totally fine. Sometimes you can tell, though, if a player is being flaky because they don't really want to play, and are doing it out of some kind of obligation. I think it's also okay to tell that player, hey, if you don't actually want to play, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to feel bad about it. You can just either show up when you want to show up, or I mean, you also don't have to commit. That's okay too. Like, you don't have to stop being friends or anything. Sometimes people just can't make it to games, or don't want to make it to games, or don't feel like playing anymore. That's totally fine. But yeah, if everybody still is enjoying the game and wants to keep joining when they can, yeah, I would just allow them to play catch up. Will, for his games, does he writes summaries every week, even when there's people not there. So even when everybody is there, he writes a summary, so it's helpful for people's memories. So a little session summary can be very useful if you're the creative writing type. If one of your other players can do the session summary, that can also work as well. Doing a little session summary at the start of sessions can help. Also, sometimes I do those myself. Sometimes I tell the players to do it. I'll usually start sessions. So on third action, I usually start the session with, and last time on third action, and I will say what happened. But in my home games, I tend to do someone tell me what happened last time while I'm doing the kind of last minute sort of setup and prep stuff. I let the players recount what occurred, so they kind of refresh their own minds on what happened last week. So that can usually be enough. Yeah, it's mainly just a matter of keeping people on pace, or keeping people remembering what happened. And then, yeah, balance-wise, if you're playing first edition, balance-wise, I just randomly adjust enemies' health and number of enemies in the encounter dynamically based on who happens to be there, and drop AC or add AC based on the feels. In second edition, the numbers are a bit tighter, so it's a little bit harder to just kind of dynamically adjust the difficulty like that. But actually, you can kind of adjust the difficulty in 2E just by playing NPCs smarter or dumber. NPCs, enemy creatures. If you run a character less optimally, it'll make them easier and make the encounter easier. If they're not attacking sane targets or failing to walk away after striking, and allowing just themselves to get hit more, that can also just be fine. Sometimes you'll need to just wrap the elite and weak templates will be your friends. They're the very, very fast version of adjusting a creature. I think if you're in Foundry, you can apply it with one click. So yeah, sometimes you might just need to add an elite or weak adjustment. If you're having trouble balancing dynamically, it's also fine to tell your players, like, whoops, I had this encounter. Like, if you start an encounter, you think it's going to be fine with, like, the 2 players and the 1 NPC, and you get it started, and the players like try to attack and miss horribly on like a 20 or like an 18 or 19, they like really miss badly, and it's against like a solo boss or something. You can be like, actually, wait a sec. I tuned this for the full 4 players. Let me adjust it really quick. And I think players should be okay with that. It's totally fine, I think, to let people know that you're not, like, you can't be perfect. Like, you can't, I think it's unreasonable to have, to expect a GM to be able to, at any time, adjust their game from 4 players to 3 players to 2 players, without any forewarning more than the night of. So yeah, I don't know. I think most players are forgiving about that sort of thing. They don't mind. If your players do mind, then they're being mean. You're the one doing all the hard work. Oh, right. There was another question. Joey asked, what is your least favorite book, and why is it book 5? I actually like book 5. I don't. Parties might not like book 5, but I actually really enjoy book 5. I think book 5 has a lot of fun characters. Having the other players recap to each other has such big teacher energy. Yeah, I know. It's a trick. I get them to do all the work for me. Your players don't mind so far. They just want to play. Yeah. Most players just want to play. So I think they're, just be wary of like, whoopsies, I've accidentally tuned the encounter too hard. You can adjust it. That's okay. All right. Anything else? I probably need to stop soon, lest my voice goes. Turns out running a session is very different from talking for non-stop for a couple hours. A human's throat was not meant to do these things. Oh. All right. Yeah, I think we'll call it there. Thank you all for joining us. So yeah, next week will be the Fortress of the Stone Giants, and then the week after should be Sins of Our Saviors, and then the week after that, the Spires of Zinshalast. Yes, I remembered all the book names. Yeah. All right. In any case, farewell, everyone. Have a lovely time until next week. Bye-bye.